Hey, I'm Sara Gonzales. Welcome to the news and why it matters. Pat Gray, we are so lucky to have Pat Gray back with us.
Aren't we though?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
What was the
What a
top
treat.
story for you, Pat?
I think just the nastiness about religion now, and people are so open about their hostility towards thoughts and prayers. It's fascinating.
Okay, Jason.
There's some crazy junk going on in Florida right now, and Rick
Crazy,
Scott.
is that a technical term? Crazy
yes, and yeah, crazy junk.
As opposed to the usual plateau of sanity.
term? In Florida, yeah.
But Rick Scott ain't having none of that.
Okay, all right, Andrew.
We're going to talk about how California is fighting against going into 21st century education. They're stuck in the 20th century.
All right. Before we get into that, I want to thank our sponsor, Home Title Lock. So apparently, and I had no idea until I heard Pat, you, and Stu, and Glenn talking about this, but home title fraud is one of the fastest growing crimes in the country.
Yeah, and it can be a super costly one. It can ruin your life, frankly, because what they do with this when they steal your mortgage is take out a home equity line of credit against your home, and then you get stuck with that bill, and that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And they can even sell your house.
Right out from underneath.
And you have no idea.
Yeah.
And you can't do anything about it.
It took them 15 minutes to transfer my information from the title that they found online over to the quit title deed, and then they forged my signature, and they essentially owned my home.
That is absolutely terrifying.
That's amazing.
Apparently, the elderly are
Very prone
big-time
to that.
targets of this, because they already have a lot of equity.
This would be such a great Christmas gift for your elderly parents or your grandparents.
Yes, yeah. So you can go to hometitlelock.com, and when you sign up, you can get the $100 search for free, so you can search and make sure that you or your loved ones have not already been a victim, because you wouldn't know. That's the whole point. Again, that's hometitlelock.com. Get your $100 search for free when you sign up. All right, Pat. Actually, before we get into this, I would like to say, in case anyone watching and not listening in the podcast, if you see like some sort of, it looks like a cloud here, it's because imagine that you were sitting in a freezer, and then imagine that it was 10 times colder than that, and that's how cold it is in the studio right now. So if you see, it's just our breath that you see. Pat.
Well, it's not that important. You know, it's not as important as how cold it is in this room.
I thought I was saying auras. Is that not what I was saying? I thought I was psychic abilities.
Just our breath.
Not.
All right.
So for a while now, it's been going the direction of people just being openly hostile to Christians and Jews even, and religious people.
Not Muslims.
Not Muslims. You can't be.
You're not allowed to do that.
You can't do that. So every time somebody offers thoughts and prayers, they're not saying that's the only thing we're going to do. They're saying that in addition to whatever else happens here, I'm praying for you, I'm thinking about you. And all of a sudden, I guess it's become a really terrible thing to say and do, according to Chris Cuomo, who said this yesterday.
The only consensus there is in a canard, and here it is. First, I would like to offer my thoughts and prayers, because that's what you do when you offer thoughts and prayers.
Look at the
You
mocking
mock
tone.
those who lost loved ones, because if you gave it any thought at all, you would never walk away from any of these without figuring out a better way to deal with them. And prayer, you think leaving it to God is the answer? We pray for strength, we pray for wisdom, for resolve, but we clearly don't want to act on any of those here. So what are you praying for?
Wow.
Unbelievable.
I mean, you can be praying for comfort for the people involved. You can be praying for healing for those who have been injured and wounded and
The way he said
damaged.
God.
He was very like that.
Very hostile.
I mean, the way he said thoughts and prayers.
Mocking.
God. Yes, absolutely.
If it's not out of bounds to mock and mimic and make fun of Christians for praying, why is it not out of bounds to mock California gun laws that have not stopped have done a horrible job? Stu was talking yesterday that California leads the nation in mass shootings, for crying out loud. Why is it not out of bounds to mock their gun laws? Again, which are probably the strictest in the nation. I would say unconstitutional, because I've lived there. It's very unconstitutional, their laws. Why can't we mock that?
It's close between Chicago, California, and D.C.
It's insane.
Those are terrible laws. And
It's insane.
Yeah, it is.
There tends to be this, I think, this position that is frequently trumpeted that gun control and conversations about it are completely binary. that you're either for or anti-gun. And I think we're seeing the flip side with him right there. Like, why can't you just vote gun control? And it's like, well, what are you talking about?
Right.
And like, this is absolutely 100% a national conversation we'd be should be doing. Why are we having mass shootings? What's causing it? How do we deal with it? 100% we should be talking about this.
Yes.
But no one wants to talk about that.
No one wants to talk about it. And I'll say, like, dead kids make bad laws, and that sounds very harsh, but if you want to actually assess this, the best way to do it is to take a breath and go, let's look at the situation. The terrible shooting that happened a couple of days ago was with a handgun. That's not what most gun laws are targeting. Most gun laws are targeting other things. So, like, let's talk about that kind of thing. And it's not this just you're either pro or anti-gun.
And the only thing that they want to say when they want to offer up any kind of example of gun control, they just say common sense.
Yeah.
Right.
What does that mean? That could mean a completely different thing to different people.
Common sense is not, I mean, to anybody who supports the Second Amendment, common sense gun control is not banning guns. It's not banning any of these weapons that are legally available to Americans. And they set up these straw man arguments like, if you say we need to do something about the healthcare in this country, you're doing nothing about the problem. Because they don't agree that that's the problem. They only focus on the guns while they accuse us of only focusing on the healthcare or whatever, anything but the gun. But like Andrew said, we've got to figure out why this is going on, what is happening to people in America. Is there help that they could receive beforehand? Because clearly this guy, as a former Marine, dealing with PTSD or who knows what was going on, but there had to be some warning signs in his life.
I did read that there were. He did have a couple of brush-ups with the law, and you know, I mean, it seems to be that if the law enforcement agencies who dealt with him in the moment maybe followed through on a couple different things, which is again what we saw in at Parkland. You know, the shooter there were warning signs. There were measures.
In that case, there were like
could have taken.
36 warning signs along the way.
Right, and they're not taking them. So it's interesting that we jump straight to gun control when there are measures that are either in place now or could be put in place that would allow law enforcement agencies to, you know, get a handle on this before it comes to this.
I'm very worried. Well, I can't remember when there's been more, I think, actual combat veterans since maybe Vietnam that have just been kind of out there right now that are dealing with severe, like, mental issues. Like, I've known a lot of them. I've been in combat with a lot of them when a lot of just people and humans, you know, they deal with that kind of stress very differently. So some people are legitimately hurting and very, very sick. And there's a very large majority of them out there. Many times that just doesn't even go reported. I mean, that type of guy, you know, that attitude, they don't want to talk about, you know, that. But on the flip side, there's another thing that worries me about it, and especially when these attacks happen from veterans, is that many, many veterans, when they out-process, they go through this like military out-processing thing, where they get spoken to by like I can't remember, it's like a career counselor type thing once you get out that say, hey, these are your options. But they also help you say, look, these are your benefits that you can get, you know, that you got while you were served. So if you, let's say, they'll say, hey, ever been in combat? Those people raise their hand. Okay, you and you. Do you have any kind of PTSD? And they're like, no, you know, what do you mean? Oh, so you've never had a nightmare? That right there, mark a nightmare down. That's going to be $50 a month. Now, who has ever like woken up in a cold sweat?
Right.
You know, okay, yeah, I have. Okay, mark that down right there. They're like almost like, I don't know if this is for you know, a vast majority, but this is my experience. And every single one of my friends were checking those down so they could get those monthly paychecks. Now, what happens if more of these attacks start happening and they say, okay, I want all the records on, you know, the government says, I want all the records of any veteran that came back from war and then mark down they had PTSD. You, and you, all these thousands of people, you are now, you know, the Second Amendment doesn't apply to you guys now. I think that's a very legitimate concern that I could see coming up in the very near future if we see more things like this. You can start seeing people like saying, look, do something about it. Don't not just thoughts and prayers. What are we going to do? Okay, well, let's find all the veterans and everyone that marked down PTSD. Let's take all their guns away. It's very possible.
Could I lurch back to your earlier point, Pat, about just kind of the general contempt there, stepping away from gun control for a second? I'm not terribly religious, but I generally get along pretty well with religious people. My undergraduate degree was in religious studies, and I think right now we're seeing a period where as civil society in general is atrophying, but religious membership's also declining, people are kind of taking that transcendent sense of being a part of something and applying it to politics. I see that all the time where it's like, we talked about kind of the fanboy status Beto had, which almost has like Obama had this kind of messianic thing. Trump has that messianic figure thing with a lot of his supporters, and that happens as civil society declines. When I was in New York, I encountered a lot of that anti-religious element going on, and what I found interesting about it was there was this kind of patter of like, well, you're from Oklahoma, people there are stupid, they pray, that's dumb. We don't do that. What we do is we go to protests. And we sing songs that make us feel good about our values, and we hang out with everybody. We usually do it on Sunday, and then we feel like we're a part of something bigger than us. And I'm like, right, that's religion. You've got religion. You just cut out Jesus and put in politics.
Actual religion with their ideology.
I think so.
Their religion.
I think that's what's happening a lot of the time.
I think so too.
And to go along with that really quickly, I read there was a study that came out that they studied people's brains whenever their beliefs were challenged. So it wasn't just their political beliefs. It would be like, a belief about, Albert Einstein or something like that. So completely non-political and then a political belief. And so they found that when people's political beliefs were challenged, more areas of their brain lit up in the MRI. So it wasn't just one part of their brain, it was also their amygdala. So they were actually processing it as like a fight or flight. You're challenging my entire identity.
This isn't like an empirical discussion we're having. You're attacking me and my tribe.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. Like you are attacking my identity to challenge my political belief. But it wasn't like that with the other ones.
Really?
Yeah,
Interesting. So it's more easy to talk about like Methodism than it is to talk about like being a Republican or a Democrat? That's interesting.
Apparently. Yeah. All right, Jason.
So what the heck is going on in Florida? And this is like, to me, this is going beyond like some kind of like hanging Chad type of situation. I mean, some of the things that are like, they're just allegations right now. But okay, so for one, I'll just start from the top. There's multiple laws being broken by Broward County in specific about when they're supposed to report election results. So by Florida state law, I think it's 30 minutes after the polls close on Tuesday, they were supposed to turn over all of the vote counts from both early voting and mail-in votes. They're supposed to turn all that over. It's been, what, 4 days since the election? They still haven't turned those over yet.
And they don't have a good excuse
Have they proffered a reason as to why they're doing that?
Supposedly, like, so
like a Florida holiday or something? It's like
they're being so evasive. Like the election supervisor keeps saying that she doesn't know how many more votes are out there. She's like, she goes, I don't even know how many. And then every once in a while, like usually in the late hours of night, she'll just do a dump of like several thousand votes, and they are always mysteriously benefiting Democrats.
Do they have like I voted for the first time in Texas this election, and I'm registered in Travis County because I thought I was going to be living in Austin, and I ended up the day of the election I spent like $30 getting it sent in because by Texas law, as I understand it, it has to be postmarked that day and get to there the following day before 5 o'clock. And the guy at the post office was kind of trying to argue me out of it. It was like you're spending $30. I was like, no, it's very important to me that I do this. But there was like a draw gate or a drawbridge that would come down at us. So is there something like that in Florida where it's like, sorry guys, like if it's not arriving here by a certain time?
I don't think so. Well, there probably is, but it kind of sounds like they're just doing it very willy-nilly. So willy-nilly, in fact, there was a video, and this will start playing here in a second. I'll just talk over it. But a video showed up. Someone took this picture of bags. What you see on the ground there are bags of votes. These little blue bags of votes.
Why are construction workers handling the votes?
I know. There's no chain of custody on this, and they're taking these votes and putting them on these.
Is that a DeLorean? It's like Doc Brown delivering the votes?
But that's a good point. They're private vehicles. These private vehicles are transporting these votes, and they're putting them on these rental trucks. Where the heck are they going? Now, I'm pretty sure that's against the law, like big time.
Yes.
There's got to be like actual like election supervising officials that maintain chain of custody. Where did those votes go? Is this why some of these votes are just kind of showing up, thousands of votes in the middle of the night, benefiting one side? I mean, I don't know. It's just so crazy. So Governor Rick Scott, who's the Senate Republican candidate, is trying to sue the crap out of them. He's trying to say, look, you're not being transparent. You're not telling us where these votes are. You're not even telling us when you're going to make this stuff available. So he's suing them. Marco Rubio went on a tear yesterday and today.
I suggest everyone go look at his Twitter feed if they have not already. He's got so much to say on it. Very insightful, right?
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, he's laying out the facts, but he's also saying, look, I'm all about the recount. There's going to be a recount. I'm all for that because that's Florida state law. There's nothing to argue there. What's to argue is these little things like in Broward County that are very, very illegal that really no one in the nation is really talking too much about. Are really not making a difference. I don't know if they're actually investigating some of these things like what you just saw. I don't know.
And before we go to break, I mean, I guess my question would be, let's say that Governor Scott does, you know, he's suing. So let's say that they say, okay, you're right, that did happen. What happens next?
That's a good question. Well,
I mean, because then you don't know which votes are true and which votes are not, and so where do you go from there?
They would definitely. I think that we would be shocked with what we find. I think this goes a lot deeper. There was another case. This just came out yesterday as well, where over 100 votes they caught and said they had to throw them out because they said they were from people voting twice. Florida, what is wrong? Like, there is a lot of crazy stuff going on.
I think Florida should just let Dave Barry decide all the stuff. As a humorist from Florida, I'd be perfectly fine with him being the one elector in that state.
Florida, what is wrong? How much time do you have?
Right.
All right, back in a minute.
It's always Florida.
No, what?
And
All right, we covered what's going on in Florida. Andrew, tell us what's going on in California.
So in California, the Democrats took the governorship, which is no surprise there. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was the reaction of the teachers union in Florida in California, to the Republican candidate, John Cox's proposal on what to do with education. So one of the things he wanted to do is introduce merit pay. And my understanding of his policy was teachers are getting paid this much right now. We're going to pay them this much more. And that's going to be based on merit.
Right.
And the teachers unions, or at least the representatives that I've been reading, were like, no, we don't want that because that's going to introduce competition to the system, and competition should not exist in education.
The horror.
So again, we would rather have less money but maintain this old system. And the way these systems work, and I want to clarify this ahead of time. I'm very pro-teacher. I like teachers. I want to give teachers twice as much as they currently make. But the teachers unions are doing a couple of things here. They tend to want, and in the case of California specifically want, pay to be based off of seniority. So it's not based off of how good you are, it's based off of how long you've been there. So if you're like a young, hotshot teacher that goes into like a really bad school because you want to make a difference and you're doing great in really strenuous circumstances, the person that might be in like kind of an easy suburb is going to do better financially because they can coast on that. And I understand that there are some problems with that. I would imagine it's very difficult to ascertain who's doing well because you have to be careful about maybe the person in a good school is going to have students that are scoring better, someone in a bad school. So there's complications there. But the main thing that I look at when I hear these arguments is we have a 20th century, actually really a 19th century education system in the United States. And this is fascinating stuff to get into. There's a guy named Horace Mann. Horace Mann was the first statewide Secretary of Education. He was from Massachusetts. At that time, this is like maybe 1850 or so. In the United States, most education was done in schoolhouses where all of your grades were in one location. It was just kind of one teacher. Yeah. This guy went over to Prussia and was like, this is great. Because Prussia had developed two things. It had developed an industrial model. We're going to treat kids like factory items. That's why they're all going to be in the same grade so we can advance them like they're on a conveyor belt. And we're going to teach them to be good soldiers for the Prussian state. And those were the two goals of it. And we took it, and it was an advancement then. But we live in the internet age now. We live in like a different world, and we can get past this. We can do some really cool out-of-the-box stuff. And we're fighting about how to fund a 200-year-old system that we haven't updated yet. And I wish we would do something different that's better for the teachers and for the kids.
It just kills me the way that unions have just kind of progressed in the United States. Because you look at, there was a reason for them to start, right? Like we didn't have federal laws, we didn't have workers' rights, we didn't have all of that. So I get why they started, but it just seems to be they've just taken such a strong hold on everything. They're just the bullies.
Well, and with like, I mean, I'm perfectly fine with a union in a private sector, where like it makes sense to me. Like we could. Glenn's not here. We can aggregate our perspective as talent and like try and have a better leverage. That makes sense, and I think that's completely within your right to do as an American. But it does change when you're in a public sector because that's something that I don't have right of exit from as a taxpayer. I don't have to go to Netflix, but I do have to use the education system. My money has to go there either way. Right. I think it's interesting. Like FDR thought that like public sector unions were treasonous. He was very pro-union. No one's accusing FDR of being anti-union, but he thought like, no, sorry, if you're using a government monopoly, which is what education is. then you shouldn't have that specific leverage.
Yeah. Jason, let's talk about automation.
Oh my gosh. This is freaky. This is quite crazy freaky. So I don't remember that. I wish I'd looked up these numbers before we went live here. But it's an insane amount of jobs that are supposed to be gone in the next, I think, 10 to 20 years. Like they're not exactly sure when AI is really going to catch on, like that first little stage. But jobs are going to start disappearing. It's freaky. It's scary. If you look at manufacturing jobs, most manufacturing jobs are just going to be gone.
We're drivers, which is the biggest job in America.
Transportation, another huge one, again, gone. I mean, you're looking at, it's tens of millions of jobs in the next 10, 15, 20 years, something like that. It's apocalyptic. But it's funny, like you always think, yeah, but my job is going to be safe. Well, you would typically think that from like, I don't know, like maybe journalists or something like that.
Us?
Like us, like, hey, we're safe, right? Well,
I get here every day and go, oh God, they let me in again.
So I was thinking that, and then I saw this.
Hello, everyone. I'm an English artificial intelligence anchor. This is my very first day in Xinhua News Agency. My voice and appearance are modeled on Zhang Zhao, a real anchor with Xinhua. The development of the media industry calls for continuous innovation and deep integration with the international advanced technologies. I will work tirelessly to keep you informed as texts will be typed into my system, uninterrupted. I look forward to bringing you the brand new news experiences.
Okay, so that is a real guy, but what you're seeing right there is completely computer generated. So it's just that they took this guy's likeness, and now the AI, the artificial intelligence, watches what's in the news, and then on his own uploads news updates. On its own. It's completely autonomous. It does this on its own. So it's been told in its algorithm to watch these different things in the news. So it watches those specific things, and then it learns. So like we were talking in the break, like you can obviously tell that.
Yeah, his delivery's not great.
It's about as emotional as Brit Hume. Actually, it's a peaking level of certain anchors that I know.
Maybe they just inserted Brit Hume feeds directly into
you could really automate Brit Hume there, yeah.
But he's going to learn.
Yeah,
so the more he hears like intonation, and how people speak, he's going to learn to do that. So that's insane. I've already heard about this even in sport. Like I was listening to sports talk radio coming in the other day, and there is an AI that if you cannot make it to the to the press conference in a locker room or whatever after a game, then they do have like a phone that they'll just sit there and they'll just let it record, and it will listen to the things that are going, and when it goes to their turn, it'll ask a question based off of what everybody else asked.
Wow.
This stuff is coming.
Insane. All right, back in a minute. That is terrifying.
It's wild.
One of my friends pointed out that
We have a brand new podcast launching. I'm really upset because I was hoping for the name Andrew as Switzerland.
Yeah, that's
not
there's been a push for Andrew as Switzerland from the Twitter community, and
because I remember I pointed out on the show that you are always Switzerland.
I'm usually the one going, now hold on, we're all friends. I'll take money from everyone. I'll hide your gold. I might put a Swiss flag up on the desk for the Facebook Live. I've got a podcast coming out Monday. It's called Something's Off with Andrew Heaton.
And boy, is something off with Andrew Heaton.
Let me just look at my hair. That's emblematic of the deep inner turmoil going on. It's going to be fun. It's going to be. I'm looking for this to be a independent-oriented release valve for the news cycle. I think like we tend to have this tend to get mad and angry, and there's plenty of that. Yeah. So I'm looking to have kind of like a fun cardboard box we can all hang out inside of, and yeah.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, give it a shot. Come on.
So iTunes?
iTunes, Something's Off with Andrew Heaton, out on Monday.
All right, see you in overtime.